Hello, this is Lit Revision for AQA A-Level English Literature A, Section C. In the last two videos, we looked at how love is presented as a memory in The Garden of Love and in Remember, whilst comparing them respectively to The Great Gatsby. In this video, we'll explore how love is reckless in The Flea and The Great Gatsby. As with the previous videos, I will share some critics that you could use in your exam for AO5 if this question or a similar one comes up. Firstly, love can be seen as reckless in The Flea through the reckless conceit. John Donne uses the conceit of a flea in his metaphysical poem to portray his intent on getting his desires. Donne writes, "Mark but this flea, and mark in this." Here, this first line is dramatic and slightly exaggerated. His conceit is both shocking and daring, as a flea is extremely small and holds a general insignificance in the world. This contrasts with the monumental importance the speaker ascribes to it. Fleas, of course, were a common occurrence of life in Elizabethan times, as in most other times, especially when bedding got changed rarely and few people bathed regularly. Donne manages to use the more unpleasant aspect of the flea's blood-sucking to his advantage. In the first three stanzas, he merely uses the flea as an analogy for union. Similarly, in The Great Gatsby, we see love as reckless. Perhaps the flea, the unpleasant pest to Gatsby's reunion with Daisy, is Tom Buchanan. He hinders Gatsby's epic romantic quest to win Daisy so that they could live happily ever after, just as it were 5 years ago. Moreover, like the speaker uses the flea as a conceit to lure the lover for sex, Tom looks at Myrtle like an opportunity for sex as she carried her flesh sensuously. Unlike the speaker's lover, Myrtle fulfills Tom's pursuit of her. Here, both texts show an Epicurean ideal of following passions in life. Every character in The Great Gatsby and the speaker in our poem is guided by their senses. Moreover, love is reckless in The Flea through the sexual imagery and language. Donne writes, "It sucks me first and now sucks thee." Here, the sexual image highlights the speaker's desires and his intent on sleeping with his lover. He justifies that the flea would be where their two bloods mingled be. Here, the Elizabethan thought that during intercourse the two bloods fuse and mix is emphasized. In the speaker's eyes, it is not a sin nor shame nor loss of maidenhead if they enjoy each other. Here, Donne references religious imagery to justify the speaker's argument. Likewise, sensuality is present in The Great Gatsby, as Tom lusts after Myrtle despite having Daisy by his side. When Gatsby first met Daisy, he looked at her the way every young girl wants to be looked at some time. This suggests that Gatsby looked at her lustfully. Yet, in general, unlike the lust the speaker portrays in the poem, we see Gatsby's earnest love towards Daisy. Gatsby and Myrtle, we could say, lose in love as the decadence and hedonism of society breeds corruption and recklessness, such as flippant attitude towards sex and marriage. Thus, Myrtle loses in love as her reckless infidelity with Tom ultimately leads to her death with Daisy's reckless driving. Gatsby loses in love as his reckless and yet simultaneous bold method of winning Daisy back leaves him donning the moniker of Mr. Nobody from Nowhere, as Tom calls him. Lastly, in both The Flea and The Great Gatsby, reckless love is shown as after Gatsby dies, Daisy returns to her vast carelessness, eating cold fried chicken and drinking ale. This highlights how insignificant Gatsby was in her life. She becomes that beautiful little fool and doesn't look back at Gatsby, who ironically killed himself by taking the blame in order to save her. In The Flea, love is reckless as it ignores the response of the female. The female's agency is present but is undermined. Thus, Donne highlights a patriarchal view of love, whereby the male takes advantage of the woman in a reckless, indifferent manner. In fact, the sexual innuendos and phallic imagery such as the insect swelling in line 8 highlight the reckless and immodest love the persona is adopting to get his lover on board. Love is reckless in both The Flea and The Great Gatsby. That we know. Here are what critics have said about each text. Ask yourself, do you agree with them, or maybe you disagree? Either way, if you include these in your exam, ensure you develop your argument so that you include your opinion. This would help you to reach that perceptivity needed to achieve the high band answer. The British Library says that fleas were everywhere in both real life and in erotic poetry, inspired by the writings of the Roman poet Ovid. Here we can see that because this poem is pretty much erotic in every sense. T.S. Eliot also appreciated Donne for his ability to select the image of absolute necessity. For The Great Gatsby, A. License says that Gatsby is a martyr of a materialistic society. Perhaps a materialistic society involves love to be reckless. J.D. Fishel says that Nick reduces Myrtle to merely a description of physicality and sexuality. Marius Bewley says that Daisy has monstrous moral indifference and vicious emptiness. Perhaps here this critic is alluding to the vast carelessness whilst eating cold fried chicken and drinking ale. Thank you for listening. I hope this has helped you in your revision and for your exam prep. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe for more content, much like this and more. And don't forget to click on that bell for post notifications whenever I post. This has been Lit Revision, and good luck with your Lit Revision.